Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing with another reading of Ballad of Sword and Wine Volume 3, which is also known as Tang Jiu Qing by Tang Jiu Qing or T97, and we're covering chapters 84 through 87. So I hope you all enjoy. Let's get started. Chapter 84, Wealth. Conscious that he reeked of sweat after a day running around the drill grounds, Xiao Chiye didn't go around to Shen Zichuan's side of the table, but instead pulled out a chair on the nearer side. Stacks of case files covered the table's surface, many still sealed with the Ministry of Justice's memorandum slip. From the date inked on top, Xiao Chiye could see they were all from a very long time ago. "You're investigating old cases." Xiao Chiye draped one arm along the chair back and picked up Shen Zichuan's little bamboo fan from the table, flicking it open and closed. "The Imperial prison's cases alone took you weeks to go through. Why are you looking at the cases from the Ministry of Justice now, too?" There was a gap in the Imperial prison's records in the 4 years before the Xiande Emperor ascended the throne. Shen Zichuan looked at the files. At the time, Jilei had the backing of Pan Rugui. I doubt he was so lacking in connections that he didn't take up a single assignment, but the Imperial prison has no case records from this period. The cases from those years must have gone through the standard judicial process of the joint trial of the 3 judicial offices instead of the embroidered uniform guard. Jilei could only follow the Ministry of Justice's lead, assisting them as necessary. "What I mean is," Xiao Chiye murmured as he blocked Shen Zichuan's view of the files and tipped up his chin with the open fan. "Why are you looking into old cases?" "It was in this room that we discussed the fall of Zhongbo." Shen Zichuan set down the brush. "I spoke of making a distant friend while attacking a nearby enemy. Do you remember?" Xiao Chiye closed the fan and rose to his feet. He sidestepped the table and walked toward the inner end of the bookshelf, and emerged at length carrying a map scroll. Shen Zichuan pushed aside the documents on the table, and Xiao Chiye flicked the scroll to unroll it across the surface. Both looked down at the detailed military topography spread out beneath them. "This is a treasure I keep stashed away for special occasions." Xiao Chiye used the fan to sketch a circle around the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo. "Of course I remember what you said. You're referring to the fact that someone used the Biansha horsemen to knock out the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo, which lie close to Chudu. This is attacking a nearby enemy. Then the Hua clan fell into decline, and the Empress Dowager was forced to marry 3rd Lady Hua to Qidong. This is making a distant friend. If we put the two together, we can guess both were meant to weaken Libe, leaving it isolated with neither support in close proximity nor assistance from afar. But playing out a game like this takes too long, and the variables are innumerable. If the player wants to ensure he makes no moves in error, then he must maintain a position from which he can view the entire board." Shen Zichuan rose from his seat and slid a finger across the map, crossing Zhongbo and coming to rest on Chudu. "He has to be here. The Xiande Emperor had only reigned for 3 years when the Biansha attacked. Too short to hatch a plot that would see Zhongbo fall. We must look further back. Many things happened during the Guangcheng Emperor's era of Yongyi that shifted the situation. Our mastermind has to have involved himself somewhere within those events. I'm hoping, if I look through these old cases, that I might find some clues." "It's hard to get the full picture from files alone." Xiao Chiye looked down at the map. "You need to find someone who was involved, or someone who knows the details." Placing his palms on the table, Shen Zichuan looked at him sidelong. "We don't have such a person." Xiao Chiye held out the fan to Shen Zichuan. "On the contrary, I do have a candidate to recommend, but what will you bribe me with?" "Okay." Shen Zichuan smiled and grasped the other end of the fan, but didn't pull it away. He looked at Xiao Chiye across the bamboo frame. "Let me guess. The one you want to recommend is Yao Wenyu, am I right?" "He's a member of the Yao clan. He would know about many of the incidents that occurred during that period. Plus, he later went on to acknowledge Hailiang Yi as his teacher. Liang Yi served in the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Personnel before the Grand Secretariat. He would know the details better than anyone. Xiao Chuye drew the fan closer, and Shen Zichuan's hand with it. Or do you not care to meet him? I've heard his reputation, of course. Whether he's truly capable or all form and no substance, I'll know after meeting him. And I do want to. But when will I have the chance? After today, I'll be tied down with work for the latter half of the month. Everyone is queuing up with high hopes to present their visitation cards to him. But of course, which of them can catch the prestige of Lord Shun? Xiao Chuye smiled. He might be a banished immortal who has fallen from heaven, but if he's not a tool meant for me to use, then even if I use all my powers of flattery, it'd be futile. Shen Zichuan was telling the truth. He had indeed heard much about Yao Wenyu, but if they were to line the man up next to Xue Xiuzhuo, he would rather work with the latter. What they were investigating were worldly affairs. There were simply too many sordid matters here. Even if such an otherworldly, divine being were praised to the skies, Shen Zichuan had little inclination to woo the man to their side. As the saying went, scholars were useless in all things practical. The work of an official was no more carefree than the courtesan selling herself in a brothel, flattering those above you and stepping on those beneath you, ingratiating yourself with others, taking a beating with a smile. Each of these acts was an art. That Liang Yi didn't drag Yao Wenyu into this mundane world spoke volumes about Yao Wenyu's temperament. Who could bear to hold an immortal down in the mire? Let him remain free and happy among the clouds. Xiao Chuye thought differently, but he was in no hurry to say so. I'm merely a casual acquaintance of his. He has friends all over the world, but those who can truly sit with him for a chat are few and far between. His manner is courteous but distant. He's similar to you in that respect. You could just meet briefly and make an impression on each other. Should need arise in the future, you could at least name him among your nodding acquaintances. Hearing him put it that way, Shen Zichuan didn't object further. Xiao Chuye wouldn't recommend a person without reason. Shen Zichuan made a mental note of it. He'd get Xiao Tianya to help him free up some time to meet Yao Wenyu later. Xiao Chuye had gone to speak with Shen Zichuan the moment he arrived. He felt warm, and the sweat he had worked up riding had yet to dry. Seeing the sweat at his temples, Shen Zichuan said, "Go take a bath and change your clothes. By the time you're done, it will be time for dinner. We can discuss any other trivial matters later." Now who's being virtuous? Xiao Chuye lifted a leg to push the chair aside and bent to hoist Shen Zichuan over his shoulder. But speaking virtuous words is only half of it. It must be followed by action. Let's bathe together. We can save time, economize effort, and conserve water. Shen Zichuan reached out to straighten the brush that had been knocked askew, but Xiao Chuye was already striding toward the bath. The water was heated quickly, and once the curtain was pulled, it remained so for close to 4 hours. Jeez. No one dared interrupt the flow of firewood. Chun Yang, being the most tactful, could read the situation best. The moment he saw Xiao Chuye would bathe, he had instructed the kitchen to prepare ingredients for the dishes and then wait. There was no hurry to serve them just yet. Shen Zichuan had come to understand one thing very well. He could starve anyone but Xiao Chuye. Xiao Chuye couldn't endure it in the slightest. He would count every last day Shen Zichuan owed him and claim his due, demanding repayment as he held him in his grasp. He was full of youthful vigor, and whatever wiles Shen Zichuan possessed simply couldn't compare to Xiao Chuye's diligence and thirst for learning. I already know about everything. Xiao Chuye reached a hand out to rub Shen Zichuan's right earlobe and leaned in close to murmur. We don't have to discuss Xi Hongxuan tonight. You've sent Gu Qingqing scouting around lately. Are you looking for Jigang, Shifu? The Imperial army is standing guard at the city gates. If they spot anything strange, I'll send someone to notify you. Shen Zichuan's skin bloomed red under his touch. He leaned back against Xiao Chuye's arm and closed his eyes to catch his breath, exposing his fair neck. His chest was heaving. Xiao Chuye fastened the earring for him. Our Gongzi will discuss nothing else tonight. Shen Zichuan leaned forward, pushing against the edge of the pool, yet inseparable from Xiao Chuye. The waves built up, crest upon crest. He trembled as his climax crashed over him. In Xiao Chuye's embrace, the sensation of being filled tipped him from pleasure into the thrill of abandon. It threw his consciousness into chaos. He could do no more than murmur vague words under his breath. The sounds sent tingles through Xiao Chuye's body. Between them, there was no setting aside the cups after taking a sip of wine. There was only drinking to their heart's content. They were desperate for true and undisguised desire, and could only find it in each other. They craved the headlong rush of their bodies clinging to each other in bed. First the storm, then the gentle rain. All their worries would be washed into oblivion by their mutual passion. They never whispered sweet nothings in those intense moments, when burning lust was drowned by the desire for love. Their intimacy lay in the unspoken agreement of their need. Impassioned kisses stood in for words they couldn't say. This was their conversation. A kiss for their desperation, a kiss to mark their climax, and a kiss for the tender silence of the moments between. By the time Xiao Chuye was sated, he had lost all track of time. He brushed Shen Zichuan's dripping hair from his forehead and caressed his wet cheeks. Shen Zichuan lifted his fair neck and pulled him closer, tongue darting out to wet his lips. Xiao Chuye had yet to pull out. He kissed Shen Zichuan again and picked him up. Shen Zichuan let him kiss him as he felt his way to the mess of their spin and drew it across Xiao Chuye's stomach with slender fingers. After they were done, Shen Zichuan ate a little porridge while Xiao Chuye fed him mouthfuls of steamed twisted rolls. Shen Zichuan had changed into a clean inner garment. With Xiao Chuye's outer robe draped over his shoulders, he watched Xiao Chuye eat his meal. Xiao Chuye had an astonishing appetite lately and ate intently. Shen Zichuan didn't know what he was doing over at the military drill grounds at Mount Feng, but he sensed Xiao Chuye's mood was poor. Lifting his head, Xiao Chuye glanced at Shen Zichuan. Go sleep on the bed. You'll catch a cold if you fall asleep like that. Shen Zichuan moved a fish to his own bowl and began to pluck out the bones. He was so tired he was dozing off, but he took his time to say, The repairs and renovations on the drill grounds have just concluded, and your funds are sufficient to cover the costs. Is someone making trouble for you? Xiao Chuye, his face impassive, chewed for a moment. I want to add firearms to the Imperial Army's arsenal. Ah, that would be tough. He instantly knew the reason for Xiao Chuye's displeasure. At present, firearms were only allocated to the 8 great battalions. This was valuable stuff, and the Ministry of War wouldn't hand it out to just anyone, much less to Xiao Chuye. But Xiao Chuye had long had his eyes on them. The 8 great battalions had let the brass muskets gather dust in the arsenal. Xiao Chuye had played with one the last time he was there, and it was there he began plotting to acquire some. But Xiao Chuye knew his request would hit a wall at the Ministry of War. Not even Li Jianheng had any say in this matter, because it was of great significance to the balance of martial forces in the nation. The decision lay firmly in the hands of the Grand Secretary of the Grand Secretariat, Heir himself. Shen Zichuan considered for a moment. His chopsticks moved to grasp a piece of fish, and he held it out to Xiao Chuye. Your intentions are too obvious. You want the Imperial Army to test the waters in preparation for introducing firearms in the Libei Armored Cavalry. Considering how wary the court is of Libei, Haliang Yi will no doubt refuse you. Xiao Chuye usually avoided fish, too impatient to pick out the bones. But now that he tasted it from Shen Zichuan's chopsticks, he found it to be acceptable. He ate everything Shen Zichuan fed him and only spoke when they were finished. Let him. I'll think of some other way to get my hands on them. Libei has its own military craftsmen. If I can find a way to get the designs, they should be able to copy them, like drawing a tiger with the cat as a model. These designs won't be easy to come by. Shen Zichuan rinsed his mouth from the teacup in Xiao Chuye's hand. Haliang Yi keeps a tight watch on those. But Xiao Chuye was determined to have them. for reasons Shen Zichuan understood more than anyone. Hua Xiangyi would be married to Qidong soon. Chudu's strategy of making a distant friend while attacking a nearby enemy was already taking shape. Li Bei must respond, and quickly. The Li Bei armored cavalry wasn't an invincible force. The reason it remained infallible was because its two successive commanders were resourceful and swift to adapt to changing circumstances. If the Qi clan really fell out with Li Bei as a result of this marriage alliance, then in addition to strategies for confronting the Biansha horsemen, Li Bei would also need to consider tactics for confronting the Qi clan's infantry. The Minister of War, Chen Jun, comes from the same hometown as Kong Qiu. We should consider him one of Hailiangyi's people. This man's been friendly enough with my father in the past, but he wouldn't necessarily even do my eldest brother a favor. And now that it's come to me... Recalling yesterday's frustration, Xiao Chiye paused. There's another way. Shen Zichuan snuffed the lamp. They lay on the bed together, sharing a pillow. It'll be hard to go through Chen Jun, Shen Zichuan said. If he's from the same hometown as Kong Qiu, that means he's from Qidong. If it's a question of Qidong or Li Bei, he'll be biased in favor of the former. Firearms. The embroidered uniform guard might have the designs. Xiao Chiye drew him into his arms and closed his eyes. Xi Hongxuan is dead, and those keys have become a gold mine without a master. Everyone's watching you. They're all dying to rip you apart and search for themselves. And you've incurred enough of your colleagues' envy. Don't trouble yourself with this. Argungzi has a way. Shen Zichuan smiled and said nothing. Xiao Chiye slowly opened his eyes. Those 2 million taels will not enter Li Bei. I've already spoken to my brother. The money will stop in Suzhou. You can retrieve the silver whenever you go back there, but you can't do anything with 4 million taels. Argungzi will give you even more. The two of them were trapped in Chudu, yet the way he said it was so genuine and sincere. Xiao Chiye had told his share of lies in the past, but in this moment, it sounded as if he had never believed anything more. He was like a wolf pup collecting the stars, hoarding them all just to stuff them into Shen Zichuan's hands, like that little jewelry box of pearl and jade earrings. He spoke through his actions more than his words. Shen Zichuan looked back. Actually, it's not just the 4 million. Xi Hongxuan did keep his keys securely hidden, but he's no sage. It's inevitable that he divulged a word or two here and there to those close to him in unguarded moments. The affair between his eldest sister-in-law and Xidan had gone on for some time, and both were tricking secrets out of him all along. He had 68 keys, 30 of which I know. Xiao Chiye, who was so strapped for cash he was on the verge of selling his manners, was fuming. He flipped over to cover Shen Zichuan's mouth, biting him until Shen Zichuan gasped lightly for breath. Xiao'er, Shen Zichuan hissed through stinging lips. You're... Xiao Chiye pinched his chin to stop him from saying it. They tumbled into the bedding, trading urgent kisses. Ding Tao was on the rooftop feeding a sparrow he had begun to tame. Hearing the thump of the pillow sliding off the bed inside the room, he clutched the sparrow tighter, wanting to peek in, but too timid. Sir, do not. Looking around, he saw his mini Guga staring determinedly into space. He gulped. I guess I'll tell you a story. My father wrote about it in his little book. There was this... Xiao Tianya and Gu Jin hissed in unison. Oh, shut up. Chapter 85. Assignment. Great misfortune had befallen the Xi clan. As Xi Hongxuan had no children to take up the mantle, his shops all over the Zhou Empire temporarily suspended operations. Their shopkeepers sent letters to Chudu and prepared to travel, ready to set up a morning hall in their old home of Chuncheng and discuss plans for the future. From the chair in his office, Shen Zichuan instructed, This journey is a long one, and you're bringing women with you. I worry for your safety. Xiao Wu, lead a few of our men to escort Xidage there. Xidan knew Shen Zichuan's true intent in sending him with a minder. Nevertheless, he hurriedly kowtowed to show his gratitude. There's only the eldest mistress left to head the Xi clan now. Shen Zichuan glanced down at the account book spread out before him. Be attentive when you go back. Other matters are less pressing. Stabilize the business first. Don't lose your head. The deal we discussed a few days ago can be set aside temporarily as well. Once you obtain the keys, keep a low profile and check the entrances to the vault. A man's wealth becomes his ruin if he rouses greed in others. Now that you have to look after such a large enterprise and manage the money as well, you're bound to encounter some trouble. Shidan understood that he relied wholly on Shen Zichuan for protection now. He was a smart man who, having worked for Shi Hongxuan for years, knew very well how to assess a precarious situation. He had decided to go all out under Shen Zichuan precisely to prevent himself from being regarded as one of this man's expendable game pieces. After receiving such guidance from Master, this lowly one wouldn't dare be sloppy. Rest assured that I'll do my best to maintain the business for Master when I return to my hometown. Shi Hongxuan put so much trust in you because you have every necessary capability, but he was overbearing and only willing to put you to work on the accounts. There's someone new in charge now. I'm giving you the chance to show your mettle. Shen Zichuan pushed the account book aside without looking up. Be honest in your work and play by the rules, and there will be plenty of chances for you to lead in the future. But I warn you now, speak a single word of deceit, and I will claim that traitorous tongue. He said it breezily, but Shidan felt chilled to the marrow. He kowtowed again, not daring to look at Shen Zichuan this time. It was noon when Shen Zichuan dismissed Shidan. Good Qing had just returned. He entered and removed his blade, and an attendant came over to serve him a cup of tea, which he gulped down. No luck. Good Qing pulled out a chair and sat. The Shi clan's manors in Chudu have all been thoroughly searched. There's no sign whatsoever of Xiansheng or Shifu. Shen Zichuan leaned back in his chair with a scowl. Could they be in one of the Shi clan's countryside estates? Good Qing wiped sweat off his brow. The Shi clan has plenty. Who knows? He might really have hidden them outside the city. It's been so long. Shifu is still strong. If he could, he would surely have thought of a way to come back and see me. But he hasn't. Shen Zichuan's heart sank. So he's trapped somewhere. He can't make it out. Ti Huilian didn't have the strength to trust a chicken, but Jigong was different. Almost no one in Chudu was his match. Perhaps there was a skilled expert among the martial artists Shi Hongxuan had hired at some astronomical expense. But now that Shi Hongxuan was dead, those hired fighters should have scattered, fleeing the pursuit of the Imperial court. Why on earth would they still care about two detainees? Call Fei Sheng over, Shen Zichuan said. I have a mission for him. Good Qing was momentarily stunned. When he could speak, he said, These people, would he be willing to take it on? Shen Zichuan raised his eyes, his gaze cold. Since he is registered to serve in the Imperial prison, then it makes no difference whether he is willing or not. If these men cannot be useful to me, then leaving them at loose ends will only lead to disaster. The embroidered uniform guard didn't lack for talent, but scouts like Gujin, whose eyes and ears were exceptional, were few and far between. Fei Sheng was a son of common birth, born of a concubine. He had inherited his father's old post and was now an assistant commander. He was the most outstanding among the guard for this kind of work, but had been previously overshadowed by Qiao Tianya. Still, he had hung on until he reached his 8th year, which he could be considered for promotion, and made many trips to his clan lands to pay respects to the Hulian Marquis. He'd fancied himself a natural choice for the position of Northern Judge. Who would have expected Shen Zichuan to drop out of the sky? This man had completely dashed his prospects, leaving Fisher stuck in his original post, standing around awaiting orders from a man who had been his junior. Fei Sheng was fundamentally different from a man like Good Qing. He knew more about the convoluted circles of court officials than Good Qing, who came from an impoverished background. Good Qing had a strong friendship with Jigong. Fei Sheng didn't give a damn about him. He could strike up a casual conversation with Han Cheng himself, who was by far his superior, and could even be considered halfway to being Han Cheng's disciple. For now, he was at the forefront of the embroidered uniform guard members who stood against Shen Zichuan. When Shen Zichuan had been at the height of his glory a few months prior, Fei Sheng had laid low and avoided him, but the friction between them had built inevitably in recent days. Shen Zichuan had spent too long examining old cases, in part because half his time was wasted on people who thought of him the way Fei Sheng did. They heeded only some of the instructions he handed down to them, and were sloppy in locating and gathering the case files. Shen Zichuan had been unable to match all the records to the correct reins and had to personally make a trip to the Ministry of Justice before he could put everything in order. The tension between the two sides was at a breaking point. Qing knew Fei Sheng and the others were capable, but still choked with resentment to be bested by them. Still, when it came to searching the city, Qing understood his skills were inferior. Finding Ji Gang and Qi Huilian was top priority. Qing bit back his objections and rose to call Fei Sheng. He ducked out from behind the office's curtain and walked across the courtyard. Fei Sheng was there, drinking wine and playing the finger-guessing drinking game with others. Qing stood in the doorway and said stiffly, "Assistant Commander Fei, please make your way into the central office. His Excellency has need of you." Fei Sheng seemed not to hear him. With one foot on the chair, he shouted loudly as they played. It was an astonishing display of disrespect, making such a ruckus in broad daylight. Qing never lost his temper with these men. He had been tagging along on missions with his old man since he was young and had seen all sorts. He was adept at taking control of others and had a strong sense of propriety. Most importantly, he was likable and could make the acquaintance of everyone from the squad commander standing guard to attendants far below him in rank. No matter how uncomfortable he was, it wasn't his way to show his displeasure. He strode through the door and took up the wine jug on the table to personally pour a cup for Fei Sheng. He said courteously, "It's nothing major, and it's not a mission on His Majesty's orders either. It'll just take a moment." Fei Sheng tossed a handful of peanuts into the air and caught them in his hand. "If it's not on His Majesty's order, go grab one of my subordinates. Why is he slinging out someone of my rank for nothing major? That doesn't make sense, does it? His Excellency makes his own arrangements. Whether or not you take up the assignment can be negotiated." Qing poured for himself and clinked cups with him. "Going over these old cases the last few days has been tough on everyone. Assistant Commander Fei has worked hard and achieved much. Here's a toast to you. Capable men are always rewarded with more work. The Vice Commander is waiting." It was no secret that Fei Sheng didn't care for Shen Zichuan. He boasted that he was Shen Zichuan's senior with many more years in the guard, and that Shen Zichuan was unqualified to order him around. But when all was said and done, they had to work together. He couldn't afford to make a scene without good cause. If news of his defiance were to make its way to Hancheng, it would reflect poorly on him. So Fei Sheng drank the wine and smiled mirthlessly at Qing. He didn't deign to answer, but collected his authority token from the table and turned to leave. Given such a pointed cold shoulder, Qing could only set down the wine and cup his hands to the surrounding embroidered uniform guard, all varied in their expressions, before he left. The moment he stepped out, his own men, waiting outside, stood up. Qing wiped his mouth. "What are you standing for? Skip the formalities between us brothers. Sit." Xiao Wu, who was of similar age to Ding Tao, had yet to learn not to wear his heart on his sleeve. "Look at that Fei Sheng with his nose in the air," he fumed. "He swaggers around like a tyrant, puffed up with his own importance. Karma's gonna hit him in the face someday. What kind of honorable man acts like such a snob? Bah! Chinga, why do we put up with him? Remove his token and drag him out, then cover his head with the sack and give him a good thumping. That'll teach him to behave." "Watch what you say," Qing rebuked him. "If news gets out that we beat up our own people, we'll all look like fools." He eyed every one of them in turn. "We are all doing our duty here. We mustn't leave any misunderstanding or unhappiness to fester. How else can we watch each other's backs when we're out on a mission? If they look down on us, we'll just work harder to prove ourselves." Fei Sheng lifted the curtain to the office and sloppily paid his respects. The reek of wine on him was so strong Shen Zichuan caught a whiff of it from the far side of the desk. Without lifting his head from his work, he said, Drinking on duty is punishable by a deduction of your salary, yes? Seeing that Shen Zichuan didn't get up to greet him, Fei Sheng pulled over a chair, but before his backside touched the seat, Shen Zichuan glanced up and smiled. Sit. Fei Sheng couldn't tell what he was up to. He sat. I hear your excellency is looking for me. What can I do for you? I have an assignment no one can accomplish but you, Shen Zichuan replied. At this, Fei Sheng relaxed. You just needed your ego stroked just a tiny little bit? He fished out a pipe from his sleeve pocket and lifted his chin haughtily. Is it an assignment from the prison? If it's an order from the chief commander, pass me the official paperwork and I'll get started. Shen Zichuan tapped away the excess ink on the tip of his brush. It's not a prison assignment, and it's not an order from the chief commander. Fei Sheng struck his flint and bit down on the pipe as he laughed. Then, it's an order from your excellency. I can do it. But I'm on an ongoing mission to track and record these days. Aren't we just about to enter the 4th month? I have to keep an eye on the price fluctuations of Chudu's daily necessities. The embroidered uniform guard was indeed tasked with acting as the emperor's eyes and ears in the city. They tracked and recorded a number of major and minor civil matters, including the prices of grain, rice, noodles, and tea. These were reported to Li Jianheng and Hailiang Yi whenever necessary. But this assignment certainly didn't require Fei Sheng's personal attention. He was a 4th-rank assistant commander, and the only assignment for which he might be directly dispatched were arrests and assignments outside of the capital. Claiming he was tied up with this mission was simply a way of refusing the assignment. Why use an ox cleaver to kill a chicken? An assignment like that is a waste of your talent. I fear my abilities have always been mediocre. I can't compare with such a naturally talented hero as your excellency. A 3rd-rank vice commander at such a young age, and even his majesty looks upon you favorably. What's more, you're a man of poise and elegance. Fei Sheng blew out a few puffs of smoke. Men like me can only hope to scrape by. We don't dare to dream of glorious work, and we don't dare act the hero either. Wait a few days. I might free up some time after that. This assignment cannot wait. Fei Sheng cleared his throat and leaned forward, fixing his gaze on Shen Zichuan. What can I do? Everything has its priority. I have to finish the task at hand before I can take on your assignment. This was the rule set by Ji Wufan when he was a commander, and it's not one I can break. You'll have to wait. Shen Zichuan didn't blink as Fei Sheng's smoke washed over his face. He observed Fei Sheng's defiant expression as Fei Sheng knocked the ashes onto the edge of the table. Feeling he'd won, Fei Sheng pushed the chair back and prepared to bid him farewell. Pale fingers flashed out to pin a slip of paper onto the desk before Fei Sheng. I can wait, said Shen Zichuan. But can the assistant commander? You're up for promotion this year. Coincidentally, the provincial administration commissioner of Juexi, Jiang Qingshan, is on his way to the capital to report on his duties. Surely you understand the Grand Secretariat's intention in this. He will take charge of Zhongbo, and he lacks an inspector general from the embroidered uniform guard at his side. So tell me, is Assistant Commander Fei still busy? Jiang Qingshan was an outstanding provincial governor. It was under his administration that Juexi had become the Zhou Empire's granary. The provisions from the armories of both Libei and Qidong all flowed from him. This was a man not even Xiao Jiming or Qi Juyin could afford to offend. Working for him as good as guaranteed one's prospects would be bright. Fei Sheng couldn't advance any further up the ranks without help. Although he was a member of the Fei clan, one of the 8 great clans, he was a son of common birth born of a concubine. He didn't grow up alongside the lawful sons of principal wives like Han Jin, Fei Shi, and Pan Lin. Without their connections, he couldn't rise any further. Being stuck frustrated him to no end, and he took his dissatisfaction out on Shen Zichuan with sarcasm and mockery. He immediately extinguished the pipe and rubbed his palms on his robes to clean them. Bending closer, he said with a smile, Look at me, not knowing what's good for me. What's the assignment? Please tell me. I need you to scour all of Chudu for 2 men, Shen Zichuan said. Shall I search openly or... A glance at Shen Zichuan and he understood. Ah, That's easily done. I'm good at this. Give me their descriptions, Your Excellency. 5 days. I'll find them for you. Shan Zichuan lowered his voice. I'm giving you 2. Fei Sheng looked at the slip of paper, clenched his teeth, and accepted. Chapter 86. Old Manor. Hua Xiangyi and Qi Shuyu's wedding was set for the eve of grain in ear in the 4th month, when the wheat was ripe for harvest and the rice was ready for planting. Footnote number 3, grain in ear, Mangjong, is the 9th of the 24 solar terms, starting around June 5th or 6th of the Gregorian calendar. The Ministry of Rites had long made their preparations and submitted them to the Empress Dowager for her approval. The internal affairs of the palace were numerous and complex, and the key government offices couldn't afford to be short-staffed for such a major event. Fu Man had originally thought himself the perfect candidate for the position of Director of the Seal at the Directorate of Ceremonial Affairs. He had attended the eunuch school, where he'd learned to read and write, and now managed the affairs in the Grand Secretariat and Mingli Hall. He possessed both qualifications and experience. Furthermore, after their encounter during the epidemic scare, he had Xiao Chiye to vouch for him. Eyes on this promotion. He'd lately been even more discreet and fastidious than usual as he attended to his official duties. Unexpectedly, when the Imperial edict came down, the position of Director of the Seal instead landed on Feng Quan. Gotta love it. Oh, the Hua clan stay doing this. Feng Quan was young and had almost no experience to speak of. He'd never studied in the eunuch school. What was more, he was a junior eunuch who had entered the palace at a later age than was customary and shared a damning connection with Pan Zhugui in Jilei. To hand this man a post comparable to that of an inner palace minister, Fu Man didn't know if he should sob or sigh. The promotion of the outer court official is dependent on his family's social standing, origins, and the teacher or master he studied under. I thought, when it came to promotion, inner court eunuchs like us wouldn't face this hurdle of family backgrounds and status. But damn! Fu Man set down his teacup and heaved a sigh. It's the same everywhere you go. What family background does he have? Xiao Chiye took a leisurely sip of his tea. He's only riding on his elder sister's coattails. Fu Man slapped his knee and lamented. Your lordship, why don't I have a sister? Xiao Chiye snorted with laughter. If the seal isn't available, there's still the brush. The director of writ also manages the Eastern Depot. Lao Fu. By letting him run out at the head of the pack, you'll escape the spittle of grandmasters and remonstrance. His Majesty's treatment of me can't compare to the former emperor's favor toward Pan Zhugui, and the Eastern Depot isn't as influential as the embroidered uniform guard. Fu Man hesitated a moment. Your lordship, considering how favored Imperial concubine Mu is at present, if she produces an Imperial heir in the future, wouldn't Feng Quan secure his position for life? It'd be one thing if he simply didn't know his place, but I fear he harbors some ulterior motive. Who's to say he won't break the court's laws and throw the state into chaos? Wouldn't that make him a second Pan Zhugui? Fu Man greeted Feng Quan with a smile when he saw him in the palace, but in truth, he was sick with jealousy. Feng Quan had Mu Zhu propping him up within the inner court. If Fu Man, who had already been so neatly supplanted, wanted to stand with Feng Quan as an equal in the Directorate of Ceremonial Affairs, he had to win over the outer court officials. He's young, and he'll still have to rely on you for plenty of things. You're familiar with the ins and outs of the Grand Secretariat, and even the Grand Secretary knows who you are. If one were to compare, he's merely a lad who takes what doesn't belong to him. He's unworthy of mention, Xiao Chiye said, comforting him. With us looking out for each other from within and without, he's not someone we need to fear. How are things in the palace lately? Second young Master C is dead. His Majesty still thinks of the tune he had yet to complete. He's been upset about it for days. Fu Man looked sidelong at Xiao Chiye. But your lordship, While I was serving tea to their excellencies in the Grand Secretariat, I heard Minister Wei saying he still wants to investigate the Xi clan's accounts. The Xi clan ran so much of the commerce at the Jueshi ports, but there's no head of household left. That business is like a piece of fatty meat before the dogs. They're all eyeing it. Isn't some of the family still alive? Xiao Chuye and Shen Zichuan had already discussed the next stage of their plans for the Xi clan. All those keys that had fallen into Shen Zichuan's hands were, in Xiao Chuye's eyes, Shen Zichuan's trousseau, but for now, he was biding his time. Not a footnote, but I am going to say that a trousseau is the traditional collection of clothing, lingerie, linens, and personal items a bride accumulates for her marriage. Shi Hongxuan's eldest sister-in-law and his various cousins all have experience managing their businesses, and they've committed no crimes. If Minister Wei digs through their accounts without cause, he'll be accused of kicking the family while they're down. Yes, and His Majesty didn't agree to it, but the Grand Secretary seems... Fu Man propped an arm on the table to move closer to Xiao Chuye. He seems intent on pursuing the accounts too. Hai Liang Yi had his own considerations. The Xi clan had far too much silver squirreled away. Rather than let the noble clans plunder their carcass for themselves, he had likely calculated that he might as well claim that money for the state treasury and let the Imperial court manage it. But if he wanted the money, Hai Liang Yi would have to fight the noble clans for it. It comes down to His Majesty. Xiao Chuye thought for a moment. His Majesty is a wise ruler, and he's committed to governing with benevolence and righteousness. Just last month, he granted a general amnesty. Wouldn't searching and seizing the Xi clan's assets without good reason run contrary to the intent of the amnesty? His Majesty must also see this. Lao Fu, Feng Quan will no doubt take Minister Wei's side on this matter. If you go along too, you'll look like you're blindly following. Next time you're serving His Majesty, why not take the opportunity to tell him in detail why it would be inadvisable to pursue those accounts at present? The gears turned in Fu Man's head. Won't this offend Minister Wei? Whether it's inside or outside the palace, there's but one true master, His Majesty. Xiao Chuye smiled. Pan Zhugui was powerful too, but he didn't throw in his lot with the emperor. I'm not at all surprised he ended up executed. And besides, does Ming Li Hall tolerate wagging tongues? How would Wei Huaigu know what words you say in private to His Majesty? His Majesty likes sentimental people. You don't have to push. Just mention it in passing. I shall take your lordship's advice. Fu Man was all smiles, warm and affable. In any case, this money won't land in either of our pockets. We might as well put it out of everyone's reach. Speaking of our pockets, the Ministry of Revenue has been tabulating the Imperial Army's expenditures on the medicinal herbs used at the Temple of Guild for quite a number of days. I wonder how it's going. Have you heard anything? They finished just recently. It's already been submitted to His Majesty's desk. Everything is in good order. Knowing that Liang Cuishan, the Ministry of Revenue official entrusted to handle the accounting, had been nominated by Xiao Chuye himself, he said, Lord Liang really is something to have kept those ledgers in such good order. There was nothing he couldn't answer readily when the Grand Secretary questioned him on it. Looks like he's on his way to a promotion too. With that, Xiao Chuye had no further questions. As Fu Man left, Chun Yang handed him a block of new tea from Hezhou, prepared in advance. It sank too heavily in Fu Man's hands to contain merely tea. He politely declined. It was only after Chun Yang's repeated exhortations that he finally allowed himself to accept. The next day, after court was dismissed, Xiao Chuye waited outside Ming Li Hall to be summoned. Shen Zichuan stood just a few feet away. The two of them maintained an appropriate distance. Not too far, not too close. There are people everywhere probing into the Xi clan's affairs. Xiao Chuye removed Wolf's Fang in its sheath and handed it to Shen Zichuan, taking the opportunity to grasp Shen Zichuan's hand around the hilt as he did so. Your Excellency ought to move quickly. Shen Zichuan seemed to have something on his mind. He lifted Wolf's Fang in his grip. He's already left Chudu and is rushing back to Chuncheng with the coffin in tow. There should be news next month. Haliangyi is unlike the others. He's made up his mind to claim the Shi clan's wealth for the state treasury. No matter how your man hurries, he'll still lose the first strike advantage. Finding Shen Zichuan distracted, Xiao Chuye released his grip. Shen Zichuan's arm sank, barely able to hold up the blade. No matter how fast Haliangyi is, he still has to play by the rules. Xiao Chuye cast a wary glance down the walkway of Mingli Hall. What's wrong? We've been searching, Shen Zichuan replied. Shifu is still missing. As long as no passage document has been issued, he's still in Chudu. The 8th grade battalions wouldn't have dared let people in or out without authorization during the epidemic, and the Imperial Army took over patrol of the gates right after. If Jigang Shifu had left, I would have heard news on my end. I also think he's still in Chudu. Shen Zichuan paused. Shi Hongxuan was only after Xianxiang. Shifu went along for the sake of protecting him. He shouldn't have been held up this long. But if Xianxiang is in danger, Shifu can't leave on his own. Shi Hongxuan is dead. Xiao Chuye shifted his gaze to the other side of the walkway. Time to get someone to check that gentleman's house. Shen Zichuan followed the line of Xiao Chuye's gaze. Xue Xiu Zhuo, dressed in official's robes, was approaching with Jiang Qingshan at his side. Xue Xiu Zhuo's looks were plain, but he carried himself with a scholarly and refined bearing. He differed from Kong Qiu, Cang Yu, and their sort. He was gentle toward others, and made a favorable impression on those he met. Jiang Qingshan, beside him, wasn't at all what one would expect. Despite the rumors, the formidable heavyweight of Jueshi looked quite a bit younger than his real age. As they drew close, the 4 men exchanged polite greetings. When Jiang Qingshan had come to Chudu to report on his work in the past, he had merely seen Xiao Chuye from afar at the court official's feast, and it was his first time meeting Shen Zichuan. But he had little interest in social connections in court, so he was neither overly warm nor coolly pretentious toward them. Many old cases were closed this year, and it's all to the credit of Assistant Minister Xue and the other gentlemen from the Ministry of Justice. Xiao Chuye nodded to Xue Xiu Zhuo with a smile. His Majesty is certain to lavish praises upon you when we meet with him today. Xue Xiu Zhuo smiled too, shaking his head slightly. It's all due to Minister Kong's insight and wisdom that the cases could be closed. I merely assisted him as I could. I hardly made any contribution at all. On the contrary, it's Vice Minister Shen who waded through that mess of disorganized case files and set them to rights. It must have been hard on him. It was only a matter of checking the Imperial prison's archive, Shen Zichuan said. This is something even a common clerk would be able to handle. Xue Xiu Zhuo's expression betrayed nothing. Other than Jiang Qingshan, the other 3 were all feigning civility. Jiang Qingshan seemed as though he didn't want to get involved. He stood to the side and said nothing. Fu Man lifted the curtain and stepped out to call their names, and the 4 men entered Mingli Hall together. As Shen Zichuan strode in, he caught sight of Feng Quan, who was serving beside Li Jianheng's dragon throne. Meeting his eyes, Feng Quan smiled. Bruh. Fei Sheng prided himself on his skill in conducting searches. There had never been a person he couldn't find, yet after 2 days, even after combing every inch of Chudu, he had turned up no trace of Ji Gang and Qi Huilian. Gu Qingqing had followed him every step of the way. When he saw that Fei Sheng had lost his arrogance and fallen silent, he asked, "Do you think they've been taken out of the city?" Despite his attitude, Fei Sheng was serious when it came to his official duties. He squatted at one end of the Shi clan's burned veranda, his gaze distant. "It's unlikely. One of them is an extraordinary martial artist. Only by taking them in a single strike would no traces be left behind. For an endeavor like this, the greater the commotion and the more complicated your plans, the easier it is to be exposed. Removing them from the capital would involve too many moving pieces." Good Ting Ting took a few steps back and surveyed the Shi Manor with its spacious halls and sprawling gardens. But if he hid them here, how could it have escaped the searches of our brothers? We've been over this estate from top to bottom. Although I never associated with Shi Hongxuan, I've heard something about his temperament. Fei Sheng rose. He was suspicious by nature. The more important the thing was to him, the closer he would have kept it. He didn't trust anyone. If these two men are so important, he wouldn't risk them being far away. Fei Sheng trailed off. He climbed up to the scorched wall and pushed aside blackened branches to peer over into the manor next door. Please don't tell me that. Oh my God, if they're in there. That's Prince Teen's old manor. Good Ting Ting had climbed up after him and crouched down to look inside. Deserted for many years. Fei Sheng dropped down on the other side of the wall and took a few steps into the painted corridor of the abandoned manor. It was peeling and drab with age, and covered in cobwebs. He used his Xiu Chun saber to knock off the thickest cobwebs and tried pushing on the doors, which were pasted over with paper seals. That's right, no one's lived here since the Guangcheng Emperor's time. Good Ting Ting looked around. You think he hid them here? As soon as Fei Sheng touched the door, he knew something was off. An abandoned manor, yet the seals are merely covered in dust, no cobwebs or weathering. Something's fishy. He took half a step back and kicked the door open. Chapter 87. Imperial Heir. The door panel fell to the ground with a loud thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. Fei Sheng covered his nose and mouth and strode in. This was the former manor of Prince Teen. Although it had fallen into a state of severe neglect, hints remained of its former grandeur. After checking all corners of the courtyard, Fei Sheng lit a candle he carried on him, extinguished his bamboo fire starter, and headed into the inner chamber. Good Ting Ting lifted the bed curtain and looked inside. This curtain and bedding are all new. There were still people staying here as of a few days ago. Fei Sheng stopped beside the table and lifted the teapot lid to reveal tea stains within. They drank spring tea from Bai Ma Zhou of Jueshi. Shi Hongxuan didn't exactly treat them poorly. When he glanced back at the bedding, Gu Xingqing saw dark stains. His heart began to pound. He lifted the quilt and took a sudden step back. Hidden beneath was a putrid-smelling corpse with obvious signs of decomposition. Whoever it was had obviously been dead for days. Fei Sheng held up the light to inspect the body. This man was strangled to death. Fei Sheng pointed to the corpse's neck. His throat was crushed. There are bloodstains, Gu Qingqing said. He took a blade to the back before he died. Not only that, look at his neck. There are 2 sets of strangulation marks. The first attempt didn't kill him. How could the men Shi Hongxuan hired be capable of forcing this shifu of yours into such a corner? As Fei Sheng spoke, he flipped the body over with his saber. There's no anomaly in the way the blood has settled in the corpse, so he wasn't likely poisoned. Look, these gashes on his back are a mess. A layman who knew nothing about swordsmanship hacked away at him. The blade missed all the vital points. That's why they had to choke him to death. They probably joined forces to kill this man. I suspect Shifu was injured. Perhaps he was too weak to finish the job, and Xianxiang had no choice but to take up the blade himself. The more Gu Qingqing heard, the more alarmed he grew. The corpse was laid out in such an orderly manner here. Does that mean Xianxiang and Shifu haven't reached the point of panic yet? As long as... It's possible the corpse was arranged by someone else. Fei Sheng surveyed the room again. There are no traces of a fight here. I'm guessing Shifu was injured and couldn't display his true prowess, which is why he needed Xianxiang's help. But wherever they were taken after this, it wasn't arranged by Shi Hongxuan. None of those hired martial artists would have dared set themselves against the embroidered uniform guard after his death just for a bit of money. Whether or not this corpse belongs to one of those hired hands remains to be seen. If it isn't... Fei Sheng ground to a halt. He had been willing to take this assignment for Shen Zichuan on the promise of a lucrative post. If Shi Hongxuan hadn't kidnapped the men he sought out of personal grudge, then it must involve court strife. Unwilling to put himself in the middle of it, he didn't finish the second half of his thought. If the dead man wasn't a hired martial artist, then a skilled expert like this could only have come from the Imperial Palace. This corpse was probably one of the embroidered uniform guards' own. Good Ting Ting understood his concerns anyway. They fell into a silent impasse for a moment before they roused themselves. In a house this eerie and ill-omened, standing idly by wasn't wise. Fei Sheng drew his blade from the corpse. In any case, the men we're looking for are most certainly still in Chudu. The houses and manors of officials and princes all have their own guards. Their doors are tightly shut, and most contain a secret passage or two. Hiding a few men is too easy. My apologies. This humble one is unlearned and of little talent. I can only search so far for Lord Shun. He cupped his hands toward Good Ting Ting and headed out the way he'd come in. He mounted his horse and headed back to turn in his report. Good Ting Ting stood in the room after he'd gone, looking at the trail of blood. Noticing that it dragged off the bedding and onto the ground, he knelt to look under the bed. The shadows here were even deeper, but it looked as though something was there. Good Ting Ting extended an arm to fish it out. It turned out to be a handful of ashes. When he blew them away, a fingernail-sized piece of paper remained in his palm, the remnant of a note Qi Huilian hadn't thoroughly burned away. Shen Zichuan closed his eyes. Pinched between his finger and thumb was that piece of paper, burned a crackling yellow. Only a few words remained on it, yet they were ones he was intimately acquainted with. Qi Huilian's notes touched upon quite a number of subjects. Most were treatises on contemporary politics, which he had discussed with Shen Zichuan in the Temple of Guilt back then. Every little thing he had taught Shen Zichuan, every inside story about the eunuchs he had known when he served as Grand Mentor, all of it was in these notes. During the epidemic, Xiao Tianya had transferred everything to the new house for Qi Huilian's personal safekeeping. To foil prying eyes, Qi Huilian had his own ciphers for recording his notes, which varied according to the treatise. All were his own inventions, created during his time at the temple. If one were to read the notes normally, they would appear to be simply a jumble of words, like the ravings of a lunatic, entirely incomprehensible. Yet he had burned them. Was it because he was forced by circumstance, or because he feared his captor would be able to read them? Xiao Tianya, who had been leaning against the wall, straightened up when he saw Shen Zichuan step out. Shen Zichuan swept down the steps. "Prepare the carriage." It was already late in the day. Xiao Tianya didn't have to ask where he was headed. The inconspicuous carriage set off, circling twice on Shenwu Street before reaching Plum Blossom Manor. "Where is his lordship?" Shen Zichuan asked as he got out of the carriage. Seeing him so solemn, Ding Tao didn't dare mess around and replied honestly, "His lordship has just stepped out to invite eldest Master Xue for a drink. He will return later. Your Excellency, shall I call his lordship back? He's just a few streets away." Xiao Chuye was probably trying to probe deeper into Xue Xiujuo's dealings. The Xue manor was a tough nut to crack. Relying on an insider like Xue Xiuyi was far more convenient than sending someone to grope around in the dark for clues. Shen Zichuan strode into the courtyard. "Just say I'll be resting here tonight. Tell him to come back when he's done drinking and not to stay out all night. But there's no need for him to rush back. Xue Xiuyi isn't someone easily dismissed." Ding Tao murmured an acknowledgement and took off. Xiao Tianya, following Shen Zichuan, asked, "Why the sudden hurry?" Shi Hongxuan didn't trust anyone, but he trusted Xue Xiujuo. Shen Zichuan climbed the stairs under the dim light of the lantern. The last time, when Xidan bluffed him, he was quicker to suspect a member of his own family than to suspect Xue Xiujuo. He always had to ask Xue Xiujuo about everything. It's the same with Xianxiang. Shi Hongxuan wouldn't have had the guts to act on his own. Before his death, Shi Hongxuan had been absolutely certain Shen Zichuan would ultimately fail. Why? He must have known something Shen Zichuan didn't. Shi Hongxuan's promotion to the Bureau of Evaluations was Xue Xiuzhuo's suggestion. He had heeded him in every particular. Why had he been so receptive to Xue Xiuzhuo's advice? Shen Zichuan's feet paused in his steps. The Xue clan had been on the decline for a long time. Shi Hongxuan would never put himself at the disposal of someone he considered down and out. He wasn't easily won over by anyone. The two had come to associate through the solidarity and friendship between fellow students. Due to marriages between their clans and previous generations, they also had some ties of kinship. But how had Xue Xiuzhuo maintained his hold over Shi Hongxuan? Shi Hongxuan put profit above all else. Even his own brother might be disposed of on a whim. Whatever minuscule blood relationship he shared with Xue Xiuzhuo, it wasn't enough for Xue Xiuzhuo to gain his utmost trust. Apprehension crept over Shen Zichuan. He looked up to the eaves. The shadows they cast resembled a menacing beast, jaws stretched and brandishing its claws, holding his body between its sharp fangs. These elusive clues were like the first rustle of tall grass that, in the darkening night, brushed against his hands and legs, alerting him to the danger. When Xiao Chuye looked up from drinking with Xue Xiuyi and saw Ding Tao step inside, he knew Shen Zichuan had returned to the manor. Without turning from his conversation, he gave Ding Tao a slight nod in acknowledgement. Xue Xiuyi was half drunk again. He'd thought to call a few prostitutes down for company, but Xiao Chuye didn't suggest it, so he refrained from rashly requesting them. Wine cup in hand, he hiccuped at Xiao Chuye. Xue Yanqing, that flock of fledglings he's raising in his estate, he settled them in the big courtyard and even hired a teacher to set up some kind of private school. If you ask me, he doesn't seem to be raising any prostitutes. Is that so? Having downed several cups of wine, Xiao Chuye showed no sign of intoxication. Beside him, Chen Yang filled Xue Xiuyi's cup to the brim again. Xiao Chuye casually clicked rims with him. Then what did he buy all those people for? There must be some reason. There's something odd about that Xue Xiuzhuo. Xue Xiuyi swallowed a mouthful of wine and continued. If not for your lordship's reminder, I would have never thought about it. The people he bought are of similar age, all good-looking, with boys and girls both pleasing to the eye. There are a fair number of people to the Imperial court who prefer men. All those male prostitutes on Donglong Street are delicate and supple. They're no way inferior to real women. Maybe he thinks the ones in the brothel are unclean, or will run their mouths and open him up to gossip and ridicule, so he's raising his own on the slide to share with friends. Xiao Chuye let him prattle and toasted him again. If that's his plan, he's going to have to put in a lot of time and effort. Those renowned male courtesans on Donglong Street have proven worth. Their patrons spend cold, hard cash on them. Besides, you said he bought both boys and girls. Is the teacher he hired only teaching the boys? That's the odd thing. Any gentlemanly refinement Xue Xiuyi possessed had been lost several cups ago. He hung his head until his hiccups stopped before speaking again. Your lordship, he lets those girls learn music, weiqi, calligraphy, and painting. All the four arts. And why not? What man wouldn't like a pretty lady as a study companion? Yet, he also lets those boys study essays on current affairs. Xiao Chuye's eyes cut toward Xue Xiuyi. He lets those boys study essays on current affairs? Is that all they learn? Xue Xiuyi shook his head hard. He extended a wavering finger. He set up a real school in that little courtyard. I've even seen him go in there to teach them personally. Your lordship, do you know what he taught? They were all proper classics. Just the other day, he was teaching these boys contemporary politics. When Xiao Chuye returned home, long past midnight, he saw the lamp was still lit in his room. Shen Zichuan was waiting for him. Chen Yang had dismissed the attendants, leaving only a few guards to stand watch over the courtyard. Xiao Chuye stepped inside. Only a single glazed lamp burned on the small table. Shan Zichuan sat before it, looking through his cases. He had removed his hair crown, and with Xiao Chie's large robe loose on his shoulders, he looked as he always did before he retired for the night. Draping himself across Shan Zichuan's back, Xiao Chie tilted his head to kiss his earlobe. "Just leave a note if you need to tell me something and get some sleep. Whether we discuss it now or tomorrow morning, it's all the same." Shan Zichuan hummed in acknowledgement and turned to look at him. Rising, Xiao Chie removed his blade and outer garment, then settled down cross-legged beside Shan Zichuan. Shan Zichuan's fingertips pinched the page of the book, but he didn't turn it. Some things must be discussed in person. They can't be explained in a jotted word or two. Xiao Chie finally relaxed and started unfastening his collar. "Let's take turns. You first, or me." Seeing him struggle with the clasps, Shan Zichuan raised his fingers to undo them for him. After thinking a moment, he said, "There are many things I have yet to wrap my head around. You go first." Propping his elbow on the small table, Xiao Chie fished out another book from the cabinet behind them and handed it to Shan Zichuan. As Shan Zichuan opened it, he said, "Among the group of people Xue Xiu Zhuo bought, the eldest is 18 years old, and the youngest is 14. Boys and girls both, mixing in the same courtyard. The only thing they might be said to have in common is that they're pleasing to the eye. 8 cities, Zhongbo, Juexi." Shan Zichuan ran his finger across the names. He didn't look at their place of origin when he bought them. Or this might have been done to obscure the truth, so that others wouldn't know where to start looking even if they wanted to. Seeing Shan Zichuan's finger pause over a name, Xiao Chie moved in closer for a look. "You've seen this name before?" "Ling Ting." Shan Zichuan looked at that name again. "I've heard this name at Xiangyuan Villa." "They're all Xiangyuan's people," Xiao Chie said. "She likes sharp and canny children. That's why she used Ling, smart, as the surname and changed all their names." "You had a drink with Xue Xiu Yi earlier tonight. Did he mention anything?" "He said something strange." Xiao Chie paused. "He said Xue Xiu Zhuo brought this group of people back to the manor, where the girls learn everything the high-end brothels teach, while the boys attend proper school. Xue Xiu Zhuo hired a teacher for these boys. They're educated not only on essays on current affairs from the Imperial College, but discourse on contemporary politics as well." Shan Zichuan considered this in silence. "If it was students he wanted, he could have picked them from decent households," Xiao Chie continued. "There are plenty of young men from the Imperial College who jump at the chance to acknowledge him as their teacher, yet he's teaching boys he bought from a brothel. Even if these kids really accomplish anything in their studies, they can't become officials due to their low status. So what's in it for him? Does he intend to raise a bunch of overeducated retainers and kept poets?" Xue Xiu Zhuo. Shan Zichuan's attention had drifted, lost in contemplation. He swiftly organized his thoughts. If he wants to raise intellectual hangers-on, there are better candidates. We missed a key point earlier. Xue Xiu Zhuo and Xi Hongxuan were on good terms. It's not as if Ohua Pavilion couldn't afford to give him the flock of brothel fledglings he wants. Yet, he specially bought them from Xiangyuan Villa. He had set his sights on a specific person all along. Images flashed through Shan Zichuan's mind. Although he didn't have Ding Tao's eidetic memory, he mulled over every word and gesture in his interactions with others. He remembered them all. He wouldn't forget any details. As long as Li blood runs in him, he's an Imperial heir. Grand Mentor Ti's words were a thunderbolt that cleaved apart the fog in Shan Zichuan's mind. Once this phrase surfaced, more followed. He sat up, scattering the papers on the small table with his sleeves. The former emperor. Shan Zichuan grabbed Xiao Chie's arm, his voice gradually steadying as he arranged his thought into words. The former emperor reigned for a little more than 8 years, and his chronic illness never improved. He had no heirs, and the only one who ever fell pregnant was Imperial concubine Wei. During the Nanling hunting grounds incident, when the Hua clan rebelled, Hua Siqian had the guts to make his move precisely because of this child in Imperial Concubine Wei's belly. But Imperial Concubine Wei was found drowned in a well the next day when they returned to the capital. At first, I suspected you. But later, I thought it had to be the old guard ministers from Pai Liangyi's side who'd struck first. Remove Imperial Concubine Wei and sever the noble clan's wishful thinking about their heirs to pave the way for Li Jianheng's smooth ascent. Now that I think about it, that can't be right either. Even if Imperial Concubine Wei was with child, there was no knowing if it was a boy or a girl. The nobles couldn't pit an unborn child against Li Jianheng, who already had the support of Li Bei. For Hai Liangyi, killing Imperial Concubine Wei would have been an unnecessary move. Tracing back further, Shen Zichuan went on, the Guangcheng Emperor occupied the throne before the Xiande Emperor, and the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace slit his own throat in the Temple of Guilt when the imperial grandson was still an infant. Had he survived, he would be 26 this year. This plot was jointly handled by Jilei and Shenwei. Jilei couldn't have been too careless if he wanted to defect to Pandrugui. He would have had to show his value. It's unlikely he left such a seed of disaster behind. In that case, the only one in this world who can still claim to be an imperial heir is... Xiao Chuye gripped Shen Zichuan's icy, cold hand and continued, low-voiced. The eldest is 18, and the youngest is 14. If there's truly an imperial heir, then only the Guangcheng Emperor fits the timeline. The Eastern Palace was massacred in the 13th year of Yongyi. For nearly a decade after, no imperial concubine carried a child to term, thanks to the Empress Dowager's watchful eyes. Although the Guangcheng Emperor was suffering from illness at the time, he wasn't that frail. Unable to break free of the Hua clan's hold over him, he must have turned outside the palace. Other than me, the only one who knew the stage floor of Ohua Pavilion had been hollowed out and filled with vats was Xue Xiuzhuo. The collapse was an attempt to kill Li Jianheng. I just couldn't figure out why, but if he really has an imperial heir in hand, everything else makes sense. He killed Imperial Concubine Wei, then tried to kill Li Jianheng. That lurking unease in Shen Zichuan's mind was growing more and more distinct. Xiao Chuye looked stricken. If that's the case, then the imperial heir is among that group of people. They faced each other. Shen Zichuan spoke at a whisper. This imperial heir must not live. Xiao Chuye pinched Shen Zichuan's chin and closed the distance between them. His eyes were deep and grave. Lanzhou, we cannot let a single one of these people live. He spoke slowly, his killing intent like a raging whirlpool in the depths. In an instant, 1,000 thoughts flashed through their minds. What did it mean if there was another imperial heir? If it was true, all their present plans would be overturned. They would suddenly be forced on the defensive. A noble clan who controlled the imperial heir would be nigh impossible to defeat. Think of the Empress Dowager, who ruled the court behind a screen for 20 years. The Li clan, in her hands, was a puppet. The power and influence of the noble clans would rise again, and Hai Liangyi would be beaten back into obscurity. A sharp knock rang from the other side of the door, shattering the heavy atmosphere. Speak, Xiao Chuye called. Master. It was Qiao Tianya, speaking urgently. The men who have been hurrying all night to catch up with Xidan are back. Shen Zichuan stood at once, gathering his robe, and opened the door. Qiao Tianya stepped aside to reveal Gu Qingqing, waiting on one knee in the courtyard. Shen Zichuan walked down the steps. What is it? Your Excellency. Gu Qingqing looked up. His voice quavered hoarse. Xidan opened the Xi clan's vault, but it had already been emptied. The leaves on the branches in the courtyard rustled in the wind. Meng cocked his head, looking askance at Gu Qingqing. Moonlight smeared the ground as white as a blanket of frost. In the thick silence, Shen Zichuan turned his head toward Xiao Chuye. Arlong, we've been played for fools." His tone was gentle, yet upon hearing it, the entire courtyard of guards lowered their heads. Well, everyone, that concludes the reading for today, and whew, all right. So again, I feel like even though there were several things happening in these chapters, there wasn't really anything too politically heavy, or I won't even say politically heavy, but just not as many twists and turns. So I am not going to do a recap, but what I am going to do is, share some of my thoughts. And of course, in doing so, some things are going to be slightly recapped. So it's a recap-ish, but more so just me sharing my thoughts. So, of course, we open with chapter 84 with Lanzhou investigating some old cases before the Xianda Emperor due to like the Imperial prison missing records, and he's trying to find clues on who the hell the mastermind is, who's been handling everything, pulling the strings everywhere. And we all want to know as well, right? I mean, mind you, this is book 3 out of 8, so I'm not sure if they'll find him so quickly. Or if they do find him, then another adversary will come up because we've got a lot left to read. But anyway, then we have, Xiao Chuye talking about Yao Wenyu being a possible candidate to learn more information from. Like, he may have some more insight on that. And we know that he's here. I didn't think about it until literally right after I uploaded my last video, when I was like, oh, who is this beautiful person that Xiao Chuye ran across? I was like, shoot. Well, yeah, I think it was Yao Wenyu. So anyway, we have still yet to get back to that individual, which I really want to go back because, anyway, we move forward. They have sexy time. And one thing that's interesting is that Xiao Chuye really, really wants to add firearms to the Imperial army, but that's not going to be very easy. So we'll just see how he goes about getting that, because I am pretty curious. And only Han Liang Yi is the one who can kind of give that yay or nay. So that's also very interesting. But anyway, moving forward, Xiao Chuye, when they're talking, he's like, I just want the design. If I can get the blueprint, if I can get the schematics, I got people, in my army. We can make that stuff. We have people in the Imperial army, the Libe armored cavalry, that can make that stuff. And so on page 112, I just had to share this. This is now officially, thus far, my favorite quote inside of volume 3, where it said, I think it's Xiao Chuye says, if I can find a way to get the designs, they should be able to copy them. And this is the part I love. Like drawing a tiger with a cat as a model. Bruh. That line, I love it. Just perfect, okay? So anyway, let us move forward with me not gushing over how much I love that line, because it's not very necessary. So then we move forward, and we have, of course, the Hua clan marriage. Well, Hua Xiangyi's marriage to Qi Shuyu is approaching, and Libe needs to be prepared in case there's a fallout. And I really hate this, but yeah, better to be safe than sorry. It's like you gotta hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. So we'll just see what happens as that wedding finally finalizes at some point. And then, of course, we have this person named Chun Jun. Irrelevant now, but will probably be relevant later. So, there we go. Apparently, he was a good friendly with Libe Daddy. But he's from Qidong, so he's probably not going to be of much help when it comes to getting the schematics of the guns and everything like that. And of course, we have Shen Zhichuan offering, but I love that Xiao Chuye is just like, you already got a lot going on, and what you're doing is something risky that everybody has their eyes on. So like, honey, I'm not fin to use you in the scenario and put you in more trouble, possibly. So I just love that moment between them. And, of course, Lanzhou also says that 2 million of the tails are going to stop in Suzhou. And also, hold on, Ding Tao has a sparrow. He's training his own little birdie, which I just thought was so cute. Like, that was the end of that chapter. And I was like, yay, birdie time. So then we move on to chapter 85. And, well, obviously the Xi clan is ruined. Like, yeah. And then we have Xidan, who's going to the morning hall in Chuncheng, and Lanzhou is having someone go with him, right? To keep an eye on him, but also to protect him. And he's like, okay, once you get the keys, lay low, right? So then there was another quote on page 115 that I really liked. Not my favorite, but it says, a man's wealth becomes his ruin if he rouses greed in others. Yes. Need I explain that one? Like, it's not something that's extremely profound or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that's like, yes, this is true. So anyway, we have that they're still looking for Jigong and Mentor Chi. Where the hell are they? And I'm so upset because we did not get any answers in these chapters. And I thought they were going to come in these chapters. I really want Jigong and Xiansheng back because, like, then, like, even Shen Zichuan is getting solemn in moments. Like, I don't like unhappy Shen Zichuan. So can we just please get them back? Because... Okay, I just want them back. So anyway, we got Fei Sheng, the assistant commander, who is great at looking for people and stuff like that. You know, maybe not necessarily on par with Gu Jin, but, you know, pretty up there, I guess. But even he can't find him. I mean, at some point, you know, he does come across the Prince Teen's Manor, which was right next door to the Xi Manor. But they're too late. Like, clearly they were there, but now they're gone. And there was a whole corpse there and everything too. But anyway, and I know I just kind of bounced to another chapter, but again, just sharing my thoughts. So they might bounce around a little bit. But yeah, even he was like, yeah, I don't know about this. I think I'm just going to call it quits. And I was like, no, don't call it quits. Keep looking, please. But anyway, you know, also, this whole strife that's going on within the embroidered uniform guard, with, like, it's split into two factions, basically. I really hope that things can be cleared up there. Like, I get it. It is really sucky when someone has been in their position for a long time. They're expecting to get a promotion only to see some newbie come in and take it. But, I mean, it is what it is. So you just got to move forward, treat that person well, follow their instructions, and then hopefully you'll get a promotion, you know? So hopefully that could be quashed at some point, but, you know, we'll see. What else was I going to say? Yes. I just wanted to thank Tang Jiu Qing for a second because they knew that all of us were struggling to remember Jiang Qingshan. And so at the end of the chapter, they graciously provide us with a brief recap. So page 124, Jiang Qingshan was an outstanding provincial governor. It was under his administration that Jueshi had become the Zhou Empire's granary. Okay, these provisions for the armies of both Libei and Qidong all flowed through him. So this was a man that not even Xiao Jiming nor Qi Juyin could afford to offend. And so I was just grateful for that little recap. Even if we don't remember the finer details, boom, there we have that. Also, sorry if y'all can hear me flipping my pages. So then, of course, going to the next two chapters that were read. Of course, we start off with chapter 86. Yes. Hua Xiangyi and Qi Shiyu's wedding, again, is mentioned, is coming. Okay? And we're in the 4th month, which I thought was hilarious because even in our readings of Thrice Married to a Salted Fish, I was on a chapter and was like, they're in the 4th month. I was like, the 4th month must be popular. And I was like, so why are we only in the 2nd month in reality? I would love to be in the 4th month, mainly because I really just want to get past the 3rd month. And in month 2, I'm dreading month 3. So, like, yeah, I really want to get to the 4th month. Anyway, I digress. Fu Man, poor baby. He was looking at the position of director of the seal in the Directorate of Ceremonial Affairs because he's been diligent. But once again, the Hua clan has paid their way, or rather just, threw someone into a position that they did not earn. And of course, it's Feng Quan. This is his position. And Fu Man is not very happy about it, but Xiao Zhiye is essentially saying, like, it's a good thing you didn't get that position. So it's like, just cool it, okay? And then, of course, he gives Xiao Zhiye, like, the rundown on what's what in the palace, which we learn, of course, Wei Huaigu wants to keep investigating the Xi clan. The emperor doesn't, but also Hai Liang Yi does, and he wants to get that money into the state treasury, but we'll have to fight the clan for it. And if you ask me, like, I think it would be great if the money goes to the state treasury, because then maybe when money is needed for certain things can actually get done, you know what I'm saying? But we'll see, how all of this stuff goes. And so then had to pause to yawn. We have it basically where Xiao Zhiye is advising him. He's like, of course, Feng Quan, Wei Huaigu, they're all going to be like, yes, let's continue looking into the Xi clan and everything like that. And he's like, don't follow along. This is your chance to stand in opposition and express to His Majesty why exactly he should be against the continued search. So also, it's nice to hear that Liang Cuishan is doing very well in his position. Yay! Hopefully he gets a promotion. So then we get back to the point that, yes, nobody can find our two missing people. Very sad about that. But anyway, I already spoke on that, so I'm going to skip that because that was like the end of chapter 86. So moving to chapter 87, which actually I guess I'm not skipping over it. So yeah, having gone to T Manor to see if they were there, which, hiding in plain sight, essentially. He hit those men right next to himself. And it's unfortunate that, whatever happened in there, that Zigang was pushed to the brink, okay? And they have a guy there that was strangled to death. And it's clear that they were recently there, weren't necessarily treated badly, but now they've been taken somewhere else. And so at first, Fei Sheng is thinking that it must be someone from the palace who has done this. So he's like, nah, bruh. But when he leaves, Ge Qingqing looks under the bed because, when playing hide and seek, you have to look under the bed. You have to look in the closet, period. And he finds a partially burned note, which, of course, eventually is given to Shen Zichuan. And it just has a lot of the insights that he shared with Shen Zichuan already, but it's written in code. So eventually he goes to Hua Manor and he waits for Xiao Zhiye to get back. So the main question is simply like, why was Xi Hongxuan clinging to Xue Xiuzhuo's every word? And then, of course, Xiao Zhiye, before he went back to Plum Blossom Manor, he weaseled some information out of Xue Xiuyi, which he then shares with Shen Zichuan. So we have these boys and girls that Xue Xiuzhuo purchased. Youngest 14, oldest 18. He's teaching the boys and the girls. All the girls are learning all the 4 arts. The boys are studying essays on current affairs and contemporary politics. And it looks like the theory that I held, but also the theory that Shen Zichuan held, but also the inkling fear, but he nudged away, that Li Jianheng held, is that one of those little boys is probably the Imperial heir. And what do Xiao Zhiye and Shen Zichuan say? He cannot live. Actually, none of them jokers can live. You just got to kill them all. So we'll see how that goes. But let me go back really quickly because I apparently have a note on, oh no, I said that. So we're fine. We're fine. Yeah. Actually, I think that was all I wanted to say. So we now know, I guess when it's been thought about, even though it hasn't been confessed by Xue Xiuzhuo, we have Shen Zichuan deducing that it was actually Xue Xiuzhuo who had the Ohua Pavilion collapse, right? To kill Li Jianheng because he's got the heir. So, again, that's where we ended. And then, of course, we have that the money that, or the keys and stuff, whatever it was giving them access to in the Xi clan's vault, it wasn't there. So now Shun Tuan realizes they've been tricked. And I'm pretty upset about it. But of course, they can't win everything right off the bat. They're going to have to come against some hard sets. Otherwise, this would just be entirely too easy of a novel, right? If they just win. So there is that. I didn't mean to clap, but y'all, I'm sleepy. It's literally the day of. I had to record the last chapter and a half. And I've just been sleepy a lot lately. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed these chapters. Please let me know your thoughts and reactions in the comment section. And for anyone who is reading Thrice Married to a Salted Fish, this afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will be having another discussion on chapters 15 through 20. So I hope y'all are ready. Hopefully I'll see you there. Otherwise, yeah, I'll see you all next time. 我爱你们。